Juggalos in recovery.
Juggalos in recovery, man.
D, you're up.
All right, sorry for the wait. I hope you all enjoyed your break. I needed to pray, meditate, and align myself. And I don't really know what I'm going to talk to you about, but I will start telling you who I am. I am Bryant D. Best. That is my full government name. No joke. I'll show you my ID. I was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida. I come from a line of addicts and alcoholics. And I honestly believe genetics plays a part of why I was an addict and alcoholic, but only a part of it, because the other thing is the choices I made and the situations in life. I can vividly remember taking my first shot of alcohol at 5. My dad gave me a buttery nipple. It's butterscotch schnapps and something else I forget. Will never forget the taste of it. I instantly loved it. It made me feel tingly. I have an older brother with autism, and I have a little brother. My older brother is 15 months apart from me. My little brother is 5 years apart from me. I could remember at 10, my dad giving me and my little brother a shot again. It was a buttery nipple. I remember sneaking Budweiser's out the fridge because he had a 24-pack in there at all times, and taking it out to the friends in the neighborhood and none of them liking it, but me finishing it. And I know I was an addict and alcoholic way before I ever crossed the lines into addiction. I would lie, hoard stuff in my room, whether it was sodas, food, whatever. I remember getting my first referral and suspension in kindergarten because I brought steak knives and lighters to school in my crayon box and blamed it on my little brother who was in diapers. So my mental twists were already there. I was already maladjusted to life and doing things that normal 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds didn't do. And I don't really have a lot of good childhood memories. Most of my memories start before and right around the time my parents got divorced. Most of the time I ever saw my dad, he was blacked out and drugged out of his mind, or fighting with my mom, and I'd be hiding my brothers in a closet and running away from the house. And then I could remember one of my memories with my dad is when he was messed up. I was riding around in this pickup truck he built, and he played a couple songs on a CD of it was Hocus Pocus and Great Malenko, the first 2 Juggalo songs I ever heard, and I was attracted to it. And when my parents got divorced when I was 12, I kind of went off the deep end in life, and my mom was dating this guy in St. Augustine, and his son was my age, and he was into the Juggalo stuff, and he gave me a Ringmaster album. And I finally didn't feel alone through the metal music and the hip hop I listened to. I could find somebody to relate to of how my life looked so dark and fucked. And right around the time of my parents' divorce, the first girl I dated for over a year broke up with me because I said her friend looked cute after she asked me if she looked cute. And from there, I just kind of went self-identified as a Juggalo, and I was a street kid up in Jacksonville, the biggest city in the United States, riding the city bus to the other side of town to get drugs for cheap, to sell them to the other kids, working underneath the table at a gas station for some Arabs, doing stocking so I could buy beer, drugs, cigarettes, had a 38 snub nose and a box of shells, because Jacksonville was a very dangerous city to be running around the streets, and I was always the chameleon. I could fit in with any group, whether it was the older dope dealers, the skater kids, the goth kids, the wiggers, all the different things from if you were born in the 80s and went to school, the different cliques of kids in a bigger city, which led me to lots of partying. And by the age of 15, I pretty much tried every drug I could think of. Besides a couple hard nos I didn't want to do. And I was already doing one-nighters in and out of juvie, and I would get into fights with my mom, and she'd tell me to pack the shit and get the hell out of her house. So I would go on the run for months at a time and do what I had to do to get by. And I remember I got arrested at 16 with like 13 felonies, and that started my trips in and out of the jail system for long periods of time. I did over a year from 16 till after I turned 17. I got out and went right back to the same cycle of drinking, drugging, partying, and trying to numb myself to life and the circumstances I was dealt. As soon as I turned 18, I got hit with warrants for stuff I did as a minor. I did another year in the county jail with 2 years of felony probation. And as soon as I got out, let me say my dad's he's been sober 16 years. So I remember going to like Alateen meetings when I was like 10 years old. So there were seeds planted. I remember going to AA meetings in Jacksonville when I was a young teen before the juvie stint. And I just never thought I had a problem. I thought it was my dad, not me. I thought I was just partying, having fun, being a kid. This is what all the other kids do. But as soon as I turned 18, I got hit with warrants for my arrest for stuff I did when I was a minor. I got sentenced to a year in county and 2 years felony probation. And as soon as I got out of county, I didn't even make it a year on felony probation because I was drinking, drugging, partying, and still living the street life. I had a girlfriend that bought me my first tattoo kit. So it was house parties and tattooing all the homies I could tattoo and just sleeping with women, making money, middleman and dope, and tattooing people. I violated that probation and ended up going and doing 13 months in a gladiator camp called Brevard. If you're from Florida, you're from Florida. It's when you are 21 and under, you get sentenced. So it's nothing but a bunch of young, angry men with a lot of problems. 90% gang population. There was a ton of juggalos in prison in Florida. That's who I clicked up with. We kind of just hung out with whoever was running the compound. I seen a lot of stuff in there that I wish I would have never seen, from people getting their throat slits, getting stabbed 50, 60 times, set on fire. Just a lot of stuff people wouldn't see, which caused a lot of PTSD. I've been in and out of psych wards my whole life. I know that I'm bipolar. They used to call it manic depressive with a psychotic disorder. And I never really felt like I fit in or could explain the things that were going on in my head, even with other juggalos. Like I drank, I drugged, I felt like I was more mentally fucked up than the other people around me. It didn't matter who they were. And within 11 months of being out of prison, the first prison bid is when I got with the mother of my kids. We were pen paling the whole time. I got out. She got pregnant. I couldn't find work because of my felonies. I was back to drinking and drugging, so I can't afford to pay my rent. And I was drunk on Four Locos, smoking spice, high. I went to a bar, went by a tattoo shop, thought it was a great idea to break into this tattoo shop so I could get ink and needles so I could make money to pay my bills. Somebody called Crime Stoppers on me and reported on the tip line for $500. I got hit with felonies that almost took my life from me. And I was raised with a Christian mother and atheist dad, so I didn't really believe in much of anything. I knew there was something, but I didn't believe in any religious ideas or spiritual ideas. I was agnostic. I was without knowledge of anything. And I am in the county jail and I'm facing this is 2010, a 15-year minimum mandatory bid up to a life sentence, depending if I took it to trial. And for the first time in my life, I honestly started to pray into, I don't know what it was, but I was like, God, if you exist this one time, I can't do 15 years in the county jail. I'm not asking to not get in trouble, but I can't do 15. And my wife was 6 months pregnant when I got locked up. She wasn't my wife at the time. And I couldn't picture being away for 15 years and having a kid born into this world. So I was just praying to whatever it was. And God delivered. He showed me this one time. Like, I ended up pleading mercy to the judge, where it was up to the judge's discretion to sentence me however he felt. And he sentenced me to 4 years in the county jail. And that was the bare minimum for the charges I had, which were an armed burglary and a grand theft. And that 4 years, I could say it was a trying time, but maybe some of the most peaceful time, because during that 4 years in there, I read an Alcoholics Anonymous book 100 times. I went to meetings. I drew. I tattooed. I read every spiritual thing I could get my hands on. So I learned a lot of stuff, but I never applied anything into my life. I stayed sober that 4 years I was away. I stayed sober for a year and a half after I got out, until one day me and the now wife got into a fight, and I thought smoking weed wasn't a good idea, and it slowly escalated into, on my birthday, going to the bar with a friend, which went back to numbing myself to life, the situations, the hand I felt I was dealt with any substance I could put in my body. And that went on for like 4 years after I got out. And I can remember always in the back of my head that judge telling me at sentencing that I had to quit blaming my criminal actions on my drug and alcohol addiction. And prison definitely helped me become a better criminal, because I didn't catch any more felonies since then. But I knew in the back of my head one day something was going to catch up to me, and I didn't know when, but I couldn't stop doing what I have done my whole life, which was numbing everything. No matter who loved me, no matter the 2 kids I had loving me, the woman that's put up with my shit 15 years loving me, my parents loving me, stressing them out, having them crying over me. None of that mattered. And I could remember just wanting to finally die and actually trying to do it. And I was sitting in like a Walmart parking lot. I chugged a $20 bottle of Fireball while eating 30 Flex Raws, while drinking multiple bottles of Robitussin and eating tons of Corsetin, hoping that would slow my heart enough to where I'd fucking pass away. I don't remember leaving the parking lot. Somehow I made it from that parking lot to the house. The family called the EMTs. They sent me from the hospital near my house to a hospital in a whole nother city, to a psych ward. They thought I was schizophrenic. It was just a drug-induced psychosis while I was in a 2-week blackout. And they shot me with Haldol while I was in the psych ward, and I had an allergic reaction and started having seizures. And they rushed me back to the hospital, and luckily somehow this doctor knew about people that abuse cold medicines, and he flushed my system with charcoal, because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me through blood samples and urine tests. And I can remember that day, because I remember being on the second floor of this hospital and coming to, and my dad standing in the window crying, thinking that he had permanently lost me, that I had fried my brain, and asking me if I knew the date or where I was, and I didn't know anything. And turns out 2 weeks of my life had passed, and I just felt like the most selfish, self-centered piece of human garbage in the world, that I would try to end my life when I have these 2 kids that love me and depend on me, and that I couldn't stop for them. And I thought stopping for them would work, and that was my bottom after hitting multiple bottoms. And I tried to get sober for them, and that lasted about 6 months of sobriety. And then inevitably, I did what I always do. I started smoking some weed, and I started getting drunk. And then somebody at my job site had some ecstasy, and that's my drug of choice. That's my love, my number one love when it comes to that. And that turned into a 4-month run of going to a town up, living out of a minivan, showering in freaking gyms, living out of a storage unit, and hustling dope so I can feed my addiction, so I can snort cocaine and do ecstasy and get drunk and get high all I want. While doing roofing in the summertime of Jacksonville, I was still broken. It didn't matter how many people in my life loved me because I hated myself and the world around me. I was just broken. I couldn't picture a life without numbing myself. And one night I was at this place called City Limits, and I was doing what I always do, and I'd been up for days at a time, and I was drinking and hanging out and being a man whore and all this other stuff. And instead of sleeping in my car, I was like, I'll go drive it over by the shop where I'm working, and I'll park and I'll sleep for a few hours before I got to work the next day. And I was driving down a back road in Port St. Lucie, and there's not really a lot of lights out here, so it's very dark, but everybody drives with these super bright white LED lights, and I have night blindness. And I swerved out of the way of this big truck coming towards me, and I couldn't see anything, and I ended up hitting a all black Beamer that was on the side of the road. It deployed my airbags. I got knocked unconscious. The car kept going and hit a mailbox. I came to with people yelling in the middle of the road before the cops showed up, and I automatically locked all the doors to the van and threw my keys in it and started walking. My van had less than 100 ecstasy pills in it, a couple grams of cocaine, some wax, some weed, some open containers, because I'm in full-blown addiction. And the cops caught me like a block away, brought me back to the vehicle, and started trying to talk to me. And I just kept repeating, I'm not answering any questions, tell my vehicle, take me to jail. They kept trying to get me to talk, and I just kept getting more of an asshole. And eventually they towed my vehicle and they took me to jail in Rock Road. And I was broken inside. I'm sitting here 30 years old where I've spent close to 10 years in and out of psych wards. Can't tell you how many times I've been Baker acted, jails, prisons, juvies, and not understanding why I couldn't quit doing the things I was doing. And all the bids I've done all the time, nobody ever sent me money. Nobody ever put money on a phone. It was letters. Maybe I get a visitation every few months, whatever. And for the first time, my now wife puts money on the phone to tell me she is done with my shit and we're never getting back together. And here, do you want to talk to your son? And my son was born when I was doing that 4-year prison bid, and I would see him once every 3 months. And every time I seen him, he had done grown and changed. And that was a painful thing in itself, to not be there. And then while I was in prison, every year, her immediate family passed away, and I couldn't be there for her either unless it was through a letter. And it was a painful, brutal process. But here I am doing what I always do, drink and drug into oblivion. Until the handcuffs get put on me. And I can remember my son on the phone telling me, Dad, are you in jail again? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, is it the alcohol? Because I used to take him to meetings with me, and he didn't know about all the drugs yet because he was still young. And I break down crying. Yeah, it is. And I could remember going to the rack in my cell, and I'm going through the worst withdrawals in my life for 2 weeks straight from all the shit that's in my system. And I'm breaking down crying, and I don't really have a higher power or faith, but I know something's out there because it's spared me before and it's sparing me again. And I, for the first time, honestly pray to whatever the fuck it is. Hey, I don't know what the fuck's wrong with me, but I don't want to do this anymore. Can you just lift this shit off of me? Can you take it away from me? And I kept saying it. I remember going to sleep, waking up, and somehow I was no longer transfixed on getting out of county jail and getting back to all those drugs in my vehicle that's sitting in a tow yard, you know? and somebody had some warrants from their past popped up in that county jail, and was telling me about the sober living place, because now I don't have a license, I don't have a car, I have nowhere to go. My family wants nothing to do with me. My kids, I can't see them. And this guy got arrested with over a year and a half sober for some warrants he did years ago. And he was telling me about some sober living house down here in South Florida called Artesian Transitional Housing. He told me, oh, it's a walking distance of a couple of labor halls. It's a big community. There's females there, X, Y, and Z. I was like, okay, check it off. That's where I'm going. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I can remember I ended up getting 45 days in the county jail because my first DUI that I had was over 10 years ago. But I was worried I was going to get more than that, or that they were going to end up searching that vehicle that got towed, and I was going to go to prison for the rest of my life from what that judge said and the amount of shit that was in my car. But I ended up just getting 45 days, and I got out 3 days after that vehicle got sold, which had all my tattoo equipment and all my personal property in it. I done lost the storage shed while I was in the county jail because I couldn't make payment. So I lost a lot of stuff. I've burnt my life to the ground multiple times and lose everything, but it's all material in the long run, so none of it actually matters. But I remember getting my property out of there and like hiding all these drugs that are in the car and trying to flush them around my family down the toilet so they don't know how bad it really was. But I know everybody in my life always knew how bad it really was. I was only lying to myself how bad I really was, you know? And my dad's like, I can get you in this other sober living for free. And I was like, I don't want to go there. It's like being in prison, and I've already been in prison enough in my lifetime. I need $320 to go over to this one. And he's like, that's a lot of money. I'm like, dude, this is the last time I'll ever ask you for a penny if you do it this time. And he did. And I got over to this place called Artesian Transitional Housing, which, if it wasn't for music, Juggalos, and the places I've been through, the circumstances of wherever my higher powers led me, I think that all accumulates to my story and my long-term sobriety. But I got to this halfway house. It was kind of like being in a college dormitory. My second day being there, I started working. I got a job. It was a shitty job through a labor hall, but it was a job. It paid for the roof over my head. And the first night I got there, somebody came in to speak from a fellowship called Drug Addicts Anonymous, which I'm still a part of. I'd never heard of it. And he was this younger kid that had over 2 years of sobriety, was happy and smiling, had tattoos, kind of looked like a metal hippie guy, and was telling his life story unapologetically and what he did and how everything changed, and with such levity. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like, and I got his phone number, and I thought about talking to him and maybe getting this guy to help me do what he did to get sober. And I was nervous about doing it, so I never called him. And I went through like 4 sponsors within a couple weeks of trying to work a program, because nobody seemed to be ready or have the time for me that I needed. And I was ready to do something different. And that's all because whatever my higher power is seemed to relieve that obsession from me in the county jail. And I believe he relieved it long enough for me to put in work on myself to change as a person. Because I was a bad person, liar, cheater, manipulator, drug addict, would army crawl on the floor to take money out of my mom's purse to get drugs. It didn't matter. However I had to get it, I had to get it. It was bad. I was not a good human being. I was angry all the time, trying to fight everybody in the world that I ran into. Didn't matter. I didn't care. I had what you would call a freaking death wish. But anyways, I bumped into this guy, and then a few weeks later, I was down in a meeting, and I sat across from him, and I was like, yo, let me talk to you after the meeting. So after the meeting, we're talking outside, and I was just like, yo, do you usually come here? He's like, no, I never come here. I'm like, oh, well, why did you come here? And he's like, well, I'll tell you is this: if the light stayed green, I was coming here. If it turned red, I was going home. And I was like, okay, there's there's something pulling some strings here. And I asked this dude to sponsor me. And before I even hit a year of sobriety, this guy wasn't even in the rooms anymore, and he never sponsored anybody else but me. But he took me through this 12-step process, and it definitely revolutionized the way I felt about myself, the way I looked at the world, and the way I handled situations in life that I used to not be able to handle without a drink or a drug. And I, in the back of my head, always knew the answer was some sort of 12-step program, but I never wanted to do it because the seeds were planted. But back in those days, I just seen a bunch of old guys that looked very grumpy, smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee. And I didn't want any part of that, you know. But this man I met, I'm 45 days sober, walked me through my steps within my first 2 months of being out of county jail. And I think that was definitely an essential part for my long-term recovery, because I needed to find some sort of peace and comfort in my own skin, some sort of relief from that obsession and craving that I've been battling my whole life. And I was definitely beat down to a point where I could accept that I was powerless over life, over my addictions, that everything that I tried and put my hands on seemed to turn to flames. Nothing ever worked out, you know? And because I was accepting of that, I was willing to give anything a try to not feel the things I was feeling, or to deal with the things I was dealing. Anything a try, but going back to drinking and drugging. And honesty, like we were talking about during Frank's things, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the principle behind the first step in Alcoholics Anonymous, and the first step in Juggalos and Recovery relates. You know, it says we admitted we were powerless over addiction, that we couldn't handle life anymore. I was beat. I was a slave to that stuff. Drugs and alcohol are my higher power. It didn't matter how many juggalos I knew. It didn't matter how many people I knew. Everybody, it was what could I get out of them, you know? It was never any type of healthy relationship, because what ultimately dominated me was the drugs and alcohol, you know? And so before I even started the steps, I was already at that point. I remember this man sat down with me every Sunday. He told me to call him on Wednesday, and he gave me as much time as I needed every Sunday to work through the steps. And that's the one thing I never did. Like, I read this book 100 times, been to thousands of meetings. I never read a book with somebody and applied anything from it, you know? And so knowing that some sort of higher power spared me from going back to prison forever, I knew there was a higher power. I just didn't know what it was. I long overcome the actual religious side of it. You know what I mean? I was more open-minded that there's something out there, but I don't think that anybody is truly completely right on what they believe in. Because of all the stuff I've read, there's good stuff in all types of spiritual programs that you can apply, you know, kind of like Tech Nine's clusterfuck, you know, put it all in a cauldron, boil it down, and find the love in everything, you know. And working step 2 wasn't too much of a big deal either. And step 2 just kind of gave me hope that if I let go of what I'm doing and quit running the show, that something better could happen. You know, the second step in Juggalos and Recovery, all the steps really correlate with the other programs, besides, instead of everything being higher power focused, even though there's some of them that's community focused. But it says we came to believe the carnival could help us screw our fucking heads on straight. I knew I couldn't manage my own life on my own terms. It never worked out. It was always problematic. But I knew that if I let go of asserting my will in every situation, and worked on myself, that everything would be okay eventually, even if it wasn't what I planned on it being. And at 30, getting sober, I didn't know where I was, who I was anymore, what I was gonna do. I was completely open to anything because all I was drugs and alcohol and fucked up shit. That's all I was, and I didn't want to be that anymore. And luckily, being open minded and willing to try something different, um, and accepting where I was at in life. I'm 30 and the black sheep, and nobody wants to deal with me because of the damage I've done throughout my life. Made it to where it was easy to accept a higher power and turn my will over and let something else happen, you know? And I found this group of people that were my age range and younger that all had 2, 3, 4 years of sobriety. And I was like, I want what they have. Like, how did you do it? Because I would hear them talk about what they did in their addiction. And I knew that we were alike. You know, the way they used, the things they did, I could relate on every level, and the things they felt. You know what I mean? And that made it pretty easy to go, well, if they believe in something and I believe in something, it's not whatever this something is, like, just guide me and direct me, you know, to whatever it is I'm supposed to do. Um, so 1, 2, and 3 were pretty much easy for me. And then I was going to do step 4 with this guy. I don't really know nothing about him because the most we talked was when we were reading through this book. And we got up to a 4th step where in Juggalos in Recovery, it says we looked at ourselves deeply without fear to recognize the good and the bad in us all. And the 4th step is writing down your resentments. Like, I know what a piece of shit I was through my whole life. Like, myself in capital letters was written like 10 times. I had done long accepted that I was the creator of my own making, and that all the choices I made, all the wreckage I did, I played a part in. So it wasn't very hard for me to sit down and put my headphones in, and within an hour and a half I had like 140 something things written on a piece of paper for my resentments and my sexual conduct and my harms to others, and my fears. And really, when I started doing that, I realized my life ran off of fear. You know, I was afraid of being hurt, I was afraid of losing, I was afraid of being successful, I was afraid of people, I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of life. So that made me do a lot of things that I probably would have never done. And so it wasn't hard to write that stuff down. And I remember I did the 4th step, and then a couple hours later, I hit him up and like, I'm done. And he's like, you're done already? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, you ready to meet next Sunday? I said, okay. And he walked me through my 5th step, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders that somebody else understood. And in the 5th steps of Juggalos in Recovery, it says we open up to the carnival ourselves and other juggalos about the shitty and not so shitty things we did during our lives. And when I told this man all this fucked up shit I did, and he did the similar things and told me at the end that he loved me and that I'm forgiven, to quit beating myself up over it, from there on, I was able to grow even more and change. You know what I mean? And without this process and be able to grow and change and seriously work it and apply it, like, I don't think I would still be sober 6 years, almost 6 years later. Um, but I was never afraid of that. And everybody always talks about being afraid of like doing a step 4 and a 5, and no matter what rooms you're in with anybody. Um, but to be honest, anybody who's lived the lives we've had with addiction and alcoholism, we've all done fucked up shit. We've all had traumatic experiences. We've all come from some sort of messed up life situation. And when I could be open minded and start relating to people and how they felt versus their situations and circumstances that led them there, it was very easy to see that I'm surrounded by tons of people just as fucked up as me. So what's the issue about talking to my shit about my shit, because my shit might be able to help somebody else. Um, but then after doing the 5th step, now I have this list of these character defects I have, you know. And he told me at the end of the 5th step, he's like, yo, you're a liar, you're a cheater, you're a thief, you're a manipulator. Um, and you're going to quit doing these things. And I said, okay. Right. So these are these bad defects of character that I've been doing my whole life that I got to learn how to not do. I have to retrain my brain from. I am my own worst critic. I hate myself. I hate the people around me. I lie. I cheat. I manipulate. I lead people on and break their hearts, and I do all this messed up stuff. I'm going to quit doing these things. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't seem too hard, But working on these defects and learning integrity wasn't easy. It was a process. And a lot of the people I heard on my amends list, I was willing to make amends, but I wasn't going to go search them all out. Besides, like my immediate family, like I didn't know how to be able to apologize for the things I'd done, because an apology to me didn't mean shit, because I've done apologize to so many people in my life so many times that for my first 3 years sober, I was just making a living amends. I'm going to be the best person I can be. I'm going to seriously work this program and show them that I've changed, because my actions will always speak louder than my words to anybody that I've affected. And my higher power has been good these past 5 years. It was crazy. I was like a year sober, and I remember my now wife like saying I was basically her boyfriend and we weren't together. And I was like, no, I'm not. And then she asked me back out, and we started this relationship from scratch again, basically, after being on and off for over a decade. I was homeless, living a halfway, no driver's license, no credit score, can't open a bank account because I done took payday loans and never paid them back. So they got it from the bank and they shut my account down. To where I am today is it's just mind blowing. But it's all thanks to whatever 12-step process you want to try to apply to your life. They're all very similar. You know what I mean? Learning to be grateful and learning to promptly admit when I'm in the wrong, and to fix my fuck ups as soon as I fuck up. That was a whole another ordeal, because like it's a swallowing of your pride and your ego. And for me, it was hard to let go of my pride and my ego to know, or to feel like I'm right in this situation, the person's wrong, instead of, well, maybe they're going through something in their life I don't know, and I'm going through my own stuff, so this didn't come out right, and it made something so big out of nothing. But the more I worked at doing it, the more it just became natural. you know um I learned how to pray. I learned how to meditate, and those things definitely got me by in early recovery. Like, and when I say pray, don't think I'm saying down on your hands and knees and doing the whole thing. My shit was just like talking to anybody else here in the room. It was like talking to my friend. It was my homeboy. Like, hey, homeboy, I'm stressed out today, man. Keep me calm. Like, I'm angry as hell. Don't let me go slap this son of a bitch. Like, my prayers were like talking to my homeboy. Like, whatever you are, I'm about to lose it right now. Keep me cool. Keep me in the moment. And it's developed from there. The same thing I've been practicing my whole recovery is every day, man. I love to turn the ringer off on my phone. I love to put some spiritual shit on a podcast in my headphones. I love to unwind and just zone out into my work and not worry about whatever else is going on in life. So that way I can stay grounded and present in what I'm doing. And if it wasn't for the network of people I've grown in Drug Addicts Anonymous, or throughout my journey in other places, I don't know if I would have stayed sober without that network showing me the way. But I can remember I'm 100 days sober through going through my steps, and I dive into service work. That was all I was about. I'm trying to sponsor people. I'm taking meetings into detox every Friday at this place called Just Believe. My first 3.5 years was nothing but service work to others. All I wanted to do was help other people, because I felt that these things that I let be me, all these nasty defects of character, all these flaws, all these things I felt about me, all these situations in life, I was finally free of them. I was no longer thinking about picking up and using no matter what happened to me. And I didn't believe that was possible for me. So I was just head first in the service work. And somewhere, if you never read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which Drug Addicts Anonymous use, there is a lot of good stuff in there if you could learn to read and apply it. But, you know, it tells me there are certain pages I would read every day in early recovery. And one of the pages is 24. It talks about being able to unable to deal with life and circumstances, and that we'll forget the pain and misery of even a week or a month ago, that we're without defense from the first drink. And that I could relate to, because like it was so easy to forget that 4 years I did in prison and go right back to the same shit. It was so easy to forget the pain and the consequences of my choices that I would be picking up again and then wondering how the fuck it happened. But working that 12-step process, there's a lot of promises in the big book, and I could tell you for a fact that they all came true for me. The being rocketed to the fourth dimension of existence, we've talked about that. Being at peace and comfortable in my own skin. If you don't know what rocketed in the fourth dimension is, being present in the moment, no matter what's going on, in line with God's will. Like not wanting to drink and drug, and the thought of it repulses me. I recoil like it from a hot flame. Like I don't ever want that again. That's not what I want back in my life. I never used to be able to picture life without a drink or a drug. So that polar opposite switch of the mind that happened through this process to me is still mind blowing. And like I said, I was just service work all the time. I went from just believed detox to, for almost 2 years, between me and my sponsee Leroy, that has his own separate podcast, if you watch the one with Panda on it. I did that commitment, and then I would finish the IOP and I go, okay, now I'm telling you, you're taking this commitment. But that high I got from doing service work to others, like everybody else is getting a lot out of it. What you don't know is I feel like I get more out of it every time I've done service work. My whole recovery, I get this spiritual high. I could be dead and miserable, angry and hateful at the world and in my pity party, and I go do some service work, and next thing you know, I feel like electric. I feel fueled. I feel ready to take on life. Everything is beautiful. Everything is wonderful type thing. And this 12-step process, I keep working it over and over again. I keep getting different sponsors. I keep finding different places, just like I found Juggalos in recovery, because without spiritual growth and development, I'm bound to get complacent and rest on my laurels with where I'm at. And I'm bound to go back out and use again, because I know that's the way my mind is wired. When I said that genetic predisposition, I was going to school for it. And it says there, you know, they have found something in our DNA, an identifier that says we are more prone to have addictive personalities. Everybody, if you suffer with addiction, it's a thing. It doesn't matter whether it's food or alcohol or anything that helps you feel good or get out of yourself or get a dopamine rush. We're more prone to abuse it. And for me, that was true. And my whole recovery, even in early recovery, I was the Juggalo kid in the rooms. Before I found Juggalos in recovery, I was always repping being a Juggalo and being sober. And I got picked on a lot by the other ones. They would bust my balls because I'm a Juggalo. And who cares, because I'm used to dealing with that my whole life. I don't really give a shit. But I would bust their balls for their whatever else they were into too. And there was a few pages I read every morning in my early recovery that seemed to work really well for me. And I would read that part I was just talking about in page 24 that tells me I'm without defense against the first drink. I would read page 417 every morning if you've never read that, which is acceptance is the answer. And it's a very powerful message. And it says, and acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I'm disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. I could find no serenity until I accept that person, place, or thing or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be at this moment. And that like rang true to me because everything in the world seemed to rub me the wrong way in early recovery. Even though I was trying to heal and work on myself, other people just seemed to get to me. And I had to learn to accept those people for what they were and apply that sick man's prayer that we were talking about with Frank. And another page I used to read every morning in early recovery, I used to read page 83 to 85 because there's so much powerful stuff in there. You know what I mean? It's starting my day off being grateful or praying that whatever is packed in the stream of life that God's there with me. Um, Helps so much to know that, you know, as long as I keep working this program or I keep helping others, like I'm not going to go back out. I have a daily reprieve as long as I'm in fit spiritual condition. Those kind of things really helped me in my early recovery. But eventually that big book, I didn't feel like I was growing anymore. I felt spiritually stagnant. I felt I was just stuck in a loop. And I was sitting there watching footage because in 2017 when the Juggalo March happened, I was in active addiction and couldn't make it out there because I'm an addict. And I was watching footage of that, and then I was looking at past years gathering footages, and I've always wanted to gather. I've always been a juggalo, but I never could make it out of the state of Florida because of my addiction. And I'm sitting there like two years sober, just going down this wormhole, dreaming about things that I've always wanted to do that I was never able to do. And at this point, I'd bought a vehicle, got my driver's license, built my credit up, saved money up. I was doing things to better myself, not only mentally and emotionally, but spiritually and financially. And I found the videos from Frank when he had the first logo and out there looked kind of like lonely, representing Juggalos in recovery on this one-on-one interview. So then I looked up on Facebook and I found a Facebook group, and it said there were Zoom meetings, but there wasn't Zoom meetings. And I was probably talking to either Chris or Ty or somebody. But next thing you know, the Zoom meetings started popping up. And I'm like super serious about my recovery and my sobriety. I wear it like a badge of honor. I am passionate about it. I love it. I love helping other people. I love watching people grow and change and see the effects of working a program happen to them. From seeing them when they're broken coming in and crying like a little bitch and relapsing all the time like my homeboy Panda over here, to when I can actually see that fire in their eyes, that same hunger, because this thing has changed their life too, because they were willing, honest, and open-minded enough to accept a different way of life that could help them. And Frank ended up running something about sending a video with a shout out of your sobriety date and how long you're sober. And I sent him this video, and COVID hits, and luckily I'm in Florida, so I keep working and life isn't too bad. But they ended up doing like a virtual gathering, and then they did something on Patreon. I think that's where it got showed during ICP's House Party Peep Show or whatever. There was a commercial for Juggalos in Recovery ran, and I was in it, and I was just thrilled that I was in it. I was like, oh, that's dope. I got put on there. That's fresh, because I am a Juggalo in recovery and I wear it with fucking pride. And I'm glad I found it, because when I found this stuff, I was spiritually stagnant. I wasn't growing anymore as a human. I didn't know where to go. And the Zoom meeting started up, and Chris and Ty and Frank, you know, started the way Juggalos in recovery is. It's so much more than the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, because it's about growth and handling situations and learning to deal with different things and being your authentic self and not confined to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, it really makes you challenge your thoughts and grow. And I felt I finally found a place I was completely me and completely at home. Like Drug Addicts Anonymous, I love it because I'm completely me, but sometimes I still feel like I'm crazier than some of the people in the rooms, you know? And I finally got to go to the gathering, and it was the most comfortable, beautiful experience because I knew when I went there that there was people like Frank and Ty and Chris that didn't drink and drug and respected sobriety and respected people in recovery and had a compassion for those people trying to grow and change as a person. Um, and when I was questioning my own sobriety and feeling stagnant, it gave me what I needed. It gave me a purpose and a motivation to keep going, to spread the message, because there is not only addicts and alcoholics out of there, not only convicts, but there's juggalos out there too that need people that I could be useful to. So it's the most fulfilling thing, not only giving back to an addict or alcoholic, but to giving back to somebody that fits all three of the things that I am: a convict, an addict, an alcoholic, a juggalo. Like, that's the most fulfilling thing, when I can be of service to them. But it's pretty simple. Long-term sobriety it's just like Frank's workshop: willingness, honesty, open-mindedness, and acceptance. If you're willing to do that, if you're willing to go through a 12-step process, whether it's Juggalos in recovery, whether it's any of the A's, A, NA, DA, any of that, if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to write down your shit on some paper, talk to somebody about it, if you're willing to forgive yourself and learn to love yourself, and then willing to help somebody else out and find that same passion, because that's the one thing that keeps me going, is that service to other people. When I see those lights come on, I see that same passion I have, like that refills my cup to keep me going. Those Sunday meetings I run, like, yeah, it's for y'all, but that shit recharges me. I'm on a spiritual high when I end that shit. I feel a sense of purpose. I see that people are serious in their recovery. I see people sharing. I see the insights. And to me, that's the most beautiful thing. I've grown so many friends through the room of Drug Addicts Anonymous, but I've grown my family here in Juggalos in recovery. People that I wish I would have met you so long ago, but everything happens in time for a reason, because if I met you so long ago, you wouldn't have liked that person that I was, you know? But my first gathering was 3 years sober, just kind of like Frank. And it was because of Frank, Chris, and Ty that I felt comfortable enough to go up there. And it was the most amazing experience I had ever had in my life. I had finally found home, where I felt I belonged, where it was nothing but people like me, whether they're the past me or the future me, all in the same place, or the present me. But it was all because I was applying a 12-step program on a daily basis through my life. Every day I wake up and I know that I'm powerless, and that I don't manage my day. My higher power manages my day. I can plan everything in the world, but when I start trying to force my will and it doesn't work out, I'm angry and upset. But then when I think, hey, I got tomorrow, and whatever is supposed to happen is tomorrow, and obviously this was more important than what I was thinking I was going to get done, it doesn't seem that big of a deal. When I'm sitting there and owning my shit with other people instead of not owning it, I don't have to write a big 4-step and then talk to somebody about it again, because I'm righting my wrongs, my fuck ups right when they happen. You know, when I pray and meditate throughout the day, everything's better. When I don't pray or meditate, I'm angry and short-tempered, you know? And I can notice those differences. The longer I stay sober, it's easy to see when my defects are popping out, and to address them. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it's service work every day, no matter how I get it. Whether it's just being nice and asking somebody how's their day, holding a door open, whether it's somebody calls, I pick up the phone, whatever it is, somebody at a meeting, a newcomer, talking to them, making them feel welcomed. You know what I mean? Making them understand, like, we actually do care. We're here for you, whether it's in Juggalos in recovery or it's in Drug Addicts Anonymous. The newcomer is always the most important, like, to let them know that they're welcome, that they're in the right spot, that we're here for them if this is what they want to do. And I know as long as I keep doing those things the rest of my life, that I'm going to stay sober. And if you're new, if you haven't worked a 12-step program, if you haven't worked the Juggalos and Recovery 12 steps, if you're more comfortable in that, there's actual work to it if you read it and do it. I'm sure there's plenty of people that could help you do it, that are in these meetings all the time, but it will revolutionize the way you think and you feel about the world. It will change your concepts and ideas. It will challenge your long thought beliefs and those things that you were holding dear, whether they were bad or not. And what's the worst that's going to happen if you give this a try? You're going to heal, you're going to change, you're going to be better, you're going to be happy, you're going to be able to be at peace. You might be able to handle things that used to drive you fucking nuts. And if it doesn't happen, you can go back to what you're doing. But I guarantee you, if you're honest, open-minded, willing, and accepting, you'll have phenomenal growth. But if you're happy with the way you are, you don't have to try it. But I would recommend it because I know for a fact an addict and alcoholic like me would have never stayed sober as long as I have without some form of 12-step process. And we were talking about it the other day. It's kind of crazy to think that 3 guys almost 100 years ago, when they threw people in sanitariums, when they locked them up in jails, and you never got out from drug addiction and mental health, found some way to overcome their alcoholism, got set free from jails, started helping other people, where it went from 100 to thousands to millions within decades. To form other 12-step fellowships, whether it's Sex Addicts Anonymous, Gambling Anonymous, Drug Addicts Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Heroin Anonymous, Lip Balm Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous. They have a lot of AAs. This 12-step shit really works and has really formed into so many other self-help groups because it really works whatever you apply it to. And Juggalos were unique and different, and we're some of the most fucked up people, and we have our own 12 steps to help our own people. So why not work it? Why not do something that will change your life? Because I know it changed mine. And it's crazy to think through all those that somehow Frank gets the idea he's going to gathering sober, 3 years sober, and he meets up with people and they write these 12 steps because the community needs it. And that in a decade span, it's went from him and a couple trusted people, a couple people that stuck around, to all these people that pop in and out of the Zoom meetings. That it's not just a Facebook page where somebody does a post and a like, that it's actual real connections, it's real communication, it's actual interactions with other family members. It's people that are being honest and open and sharing their experience, their strength, their hope, their advice, their suggestions to help other people overcome what all of us over here have been overcoming. It's such a beautiful thing. And it's all divinely inspired some way, shape, or form to lead to where it is now from some people 100 years ago that we wouldn't even be talking the same language. If you stay connected with people, if you stay working a 12-step program, if you stay involved, I guarantee you this passion for it, this hunger for it doesn't go away. So when we quit working these things that we think we're unique, that we think we're so different from somebody else, whether it's in these rooms or other rooms, that we tend to push ourselves away and we quit being involved in what used to help, you know? And I never knew what my purpose was in life, but now I know my purpose is just to keep spreading my message and the things I've done in my life and how I've come from there. Because I went from in 2010 facing 15 years of life to 2018 finding sobriety, finally being homeless, being lost every relationship I could, to having a bank account, having money saved, having vehicles, have a 5-bedroom, 3 house, was able to move in my parents and my autistic brother and help take care of them, able to give back to my community, been to college, have a vocational trade, have some college credits, haven't finished it yet because I'm making a change in what I want to do in life. But to be able to be of service to others and happy and comfortable in my own skin, like the material shit doesn't matter at the end of the day. I could lose it tomorrow. But as long as I stay sober and I can spread that message, I know I could make it through anything in life. And as long as I'm working on myself every day to be a better version of myself, and I'm handling things that I used to not be able to handle without a drink or a drug, I know that I'm going to be fine. And I think that's essential to anybody who has a drug or alcohol problem or addiction problem to overcome it and to ensure long term sobriety is to work the damn thing, stay connected, and help others. And even in our darkest times, like when we help others, that sense of relief and that sense of purpose and that feeling related helps you overcome no matter what's going on.